Celtic. Becky, great ball in. Ellen White for Manchester City.
Decent hit, wonderful goal. The first ever in a Manchester derby in FAWSL is an absolute blinder, scored by Caroline Weir.
Hello and welcome back to MCW Fancast. This is our first episode of the 21-22 season. It's great to be back. Hope you've all had a great summer and all is good with you. We're here, we've made it, and those chicken balti pasties are all but within touching distance. For our first episode of the 21-22 season, we're joined by a friend of the show, Dan Pentland, Chief Editor of FAWSL Full-Time Magazine, and we're looking ahead to the start of the new season.
Hi, I'm Janine Becky, and you're listening to MCW Fancast.
Dan, always a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. How are you? Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. I know you're a busy man, obviously. And I always appreciate you taking the time to join us, especially off of the back of what's been an intensely busy summer, what with Tokyo 2020 in the mix, and now we're into the thick of the pre-season preparations. It feels as though it's properly crept up on us, though.
Yeah, there's been so much going on, hasn't there? But I don't know how many transfers there's been, but it seems like we're into the hundreds. Obviously, the Olympics filled a nice little gap as well. But yeah, here we go.
Just quick on the Olympics, what did you make of, obviously, the tournament itself? And were you happy, obviously, with the result with Canada and that gold medal finish?
Yeah, it was a strange one, I suppose. I don't know what makes an Olympics different, but it felt like it was very different from a World Cup. It probably wasn't as predictable. As you said, Canada obviously won gold in the end. You saw Sweden and Australia in the latter stages as well. You might not have generally kind of seen that in a World Cup. So, yeah, it was a funny one. It was wide open. And, whether it comes down to preparation, who can handle the heat in Japan, who deals with the Olympic Village environment and all that kind of thing. Maybe that comes into it a little bit. But yeah, a little bit unexpected. Delighted for Canada. I think Bev Priestman's done a great job there in a very short space of time with limited players as well when she first took over. So yeah, fantastic, and fantastic obviously for our English-based players as well.
New season, new faces, new challenges as well, I suppose. Many clubs, like you said, have seen changes within the squads this summer. And like you said, there's been plenty of movement throughout the clubs. Some quietly going about their business and others making sort of statement of intent for the season. What can we possibly expect from the WSL this season? And will there be any surprises in this league to contend with, do you think?
Yeah, I think everybody looks at Everton on how well they've recruited over the summer. I think Willie Kirk went into the close season with a target. He'd done a lot of groundwork before the end of the season. I think he had probably 7 or 8 targets, certainly when I spoke to him after the Chelsea game in May, that he wanted to bring in. And, it sounds to me like he's got a lot of his targets and he's possibly added a little bit more. I think they're up to 9 or 10 signings now. All of international standard, some real quality in there. So if anybody's going to kind of gate crash the top 3 this year, it could possibly be Everton. But again, you're looking at Chelsea, you're going to be very strong. City are hopefully going to be very strong as well. Arsenal have shown in the Champions League that their fans have got a lot to look forward to this year. And then down the bottom, I suppose it's a lot more tougher to call than what it was last season. There could be 5 or 6 sides. Birmingham have obviously changed things a little. West Ham have been mentioned as potential strugglers, but again, they've signed some good players. There's no guarantee they'll be down there. Spurs, one side which might kind of be a little bit of a shock in terms of maybe not achieving might be Brighton. They're very short on numbers unless they bring some more in before the start of the season. They're going to have a very small squad, and obviously, it clicked the second half of last season, but let's not forget where they were in January. They probably need some more experienced bodies, certainly in defence and midfield.
Without a doubt. And we'll talk about Everton in a bit, but I mean, it feels ultra exciting, and I feel that's really starting to begin to translate as well throughout the fan bases. Obviously, getting back in the stadiums and clubs welcoming fans back to the stadiums. I mean, the fans truly have been missed. We're looking ahead now and getting the fans back, and it really is something that I think we can all look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's worked two ways really. I think the fans have missed getting into the grounds, supporting the clubs, watching what's a kind of ever improving product, if you like. Likewise, at the same time, the clubs need the fans to, certainly the further down the pyramid you go, to keep going and obviously keep the budget to a decent level to bring in good quality players and progress. So yeah, there's two sides to it. But yeah, I think everybody's delighted. I think the broadcast deal, I walked into town the other day and saw Frank Kirby on a billboard. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's the big stadium thing, Spurs playing at home, Arsenal playing at the Emirates, all that kind of thing is going to hopefully bring out a new audience. It might not be full houses, but even if you can bring another couple of thousand into watching games on a regular basis, then that's only going to improve things and increase the profile of the league overall.
I mean, Manchester City will start their season campaign with an away trip to Everton, a fixture which will be hosted at one of the first major football stadiums built in England, Goodison Park, and I'm really looking forward to it. I can't believe I've never been to Goodison Park. So not only first game of the season, an away day, but also a ground that I can tick off the list that I can say that I've been to. I know you're going yourself. How much are you looking forward to this fixture?
Yeah, I think it'll be great. And I think there's little potential twists in the tail on both sides. Obviously, you've got players like Tony Duggan, obviously, on the Everton side, Izzy Christiansen, Haley Rasso now in the City camp as well. So, yeah, there's a little bit of spice in that game. I think everybody's trying to play it down a little bit and, it's just another game and, focusing on their own club. But yeah, I think there'll be a bit of spice in it. I think Everton won't be easy opponents, regardless of where they play this year. I think it'll be a tricky game. I think they've got a lot of attacking quality in the team now. And ultimately, at the end of the day, from an Everton point of view, I think points against big sides let them down last year. And I think that's the one thing, their one big goal this year. I know Willie Kirk's mentioned it previously, is that they want to go out and play the Arsenals, the Cities, the Chelseas, the Man United, and get regular points on the board, because it just hasn't happened for them, in previous seasons. But they look a lot stronger and a lot more, packed full of international experience. And, it's a great test for City as well to see how far they've come. Obviously, the start last year, the title slipped away a little bit too early on, and, it just proved a step too far in the end. So, equally City will want to go there and put down a real marker.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt it'll be a tough test for City away, and especially away from home as well. And like you say, Willie Kirk, he's had a good summer, made some stellar signings, building on from the foundations that I feel are already quite strong for Everton, really. We all know how important it is, obviously, to get off to a good start in this league. And both teams, like you say, will be searching for those 3 points to kick off their season campaigns. And like you said, with Everton, it almost feels like they've brought that balance in now of those more experienced players, like you said.
Yeah, I think Willie's gone there with a plan. It wouldn't surprise me that his planning didn't start this time last year, potentially thinking about, in each transfer window, what players are going to be required and what they need to bring in to build their next block, I suppose, on their kind of foundations. He's clearly gone into the summer knowing the players that he's wanted to sign. And as I say, it shows the backing that Everton's getting. I know they obviously lost Rasso, but it shows the backing they're getting from the men's side, the fact that they're able to bring in these players. I mean, I don't think they've announced it yet, but I think I've heard Bennison's going there, who was the big player in Sweden that I think, her club really wanted to keep hold of her, but it sounds like she's on the move. Obviously, they've got Anvegard and Bjorn, who are, again, players who were, in high demand, across Europe, really. Tony Duggan going back there. They've really, really recruited well, and they're not just recruiting for this season. It looks like they're putting a team together which is going to flourish for 2 or 3 years and, hopefully take them where they want to go.
Do you think season objectives for Everton is getting that top 3 finish then for Champions League?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think, as I say, I know that Willie's want to pick up those points against the big sides and see what happens from there. But there's no doubt in the fact, and I don't think they can hide the fact that they've spent a lot of money this summer, and they'll have players on decent wages. I think the challenge is, that they want to get into the Champions League. I suppose a little challenge there that they want to retain players as well. They don't want to be bringing in players for a year to then move to a City or a Chelsea. I suppose they've got to bond them and make sure that they're kind of glued together for a long period. But yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to win silverware and qualify for Europe. And yeah, you feel like, that could be achieved this year.
Do you think we'll see more clubs utilise ML counterpart stadiums for the WSL season? Obviously with Everton, Goodison Park, we've obviously seen quite a few fixtures, like you said, at Emirates. United had their game played behind closed doors at Old Trafford, but that was a major stepping stone for them. Do you think again that we'll see, more clubs utilise that platform?
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think opening weekend, you've got a game at Spurs, obviously Everton, Brighton are playing at the Amex. It seems to fall within international windows in the men's game. So I'd expect again in November, potentially, we might have the same again. The Super League weekend, when they play the 6 games across the weekend, they usually play them at men's venues or, there's ticket incentives, that sort of thing. And every game's televised. So, the women's football weekend might bring it out again. We're even seeing it in the Championship. I think Watford are going to play their first 3 games at Vicarage Road, which is really big for them, bearing in mind they were a National League club last season. No doubt that Charlton might play a game at the Valley. I think Palace play at Selhurst Park occasionally as well. So yeah, I think between the 2 divisions, I think we will see games played at men's grounds, and let's hope it becomes a little bit more regular.
So let's talk about City then in their pre-season, which it's offered little really in terms of pre-season for City. Having fully regrouped at the training at the CFA earlier this week off of the back of the Olympics and a well-earned break for many. The team are now in preparation for their first competitive fixture of the season in the UEFA Women's Champions League against Real Madrid, which takes place next week. The round 2 ties will take place on either the 31st or 1st of September and the 8th and 9th, with the precise dates to be confirmed in due course, with the opening WSL game against Everton sandwiched in between. I mean, it really is an intense scheduling of games, really, to start the season off for City.
Yeah, it's difficult, really, because I think we don't know an awful lot about Real Madrid. We obviously know they were put together last year as like a franchise of CD tack on. They've had a year. They've obviously got Champions League first year round, which is pretty impressive. And as we know with City, with Spanish teams, they're never ever easy games. And
Still not over it, Dan.
It looks like if you look at the fact that they've played Atletico Madrid twice and they've been in a similar position to Real Madrid, it shows that it's going to be a difficult tie over 2 legs. You've obviously got that game at Everton's not going to be easy. And obviously you've got players coming back in from the Olympics. The squad still looks a little bit light in 1 or 2 areas. So there's going to be extra demands on certain players as well. And obviously there's a few injuries in 1 or 2 key positions last year as well. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy start to the season, but I think there's other clubs in a similar kind of boat to City. Obviously Arsenal have spent the last week in Russia playing 2 games, and I think they start off with Chelsea at home, don't they? And I think they've got City quite early in the season as well. But yeah, it's going to be an endurance test. And if those sides at the top who have a lot of games falter, I suppose you've got Chelsea who don't come into the Champions League later on. They'll look to capitalise. Man United, Everton. So there could be a little bit of catch up, but yeah, it's just going to be about squad management, keeping everybody fit, and just trying to manage minutes as best as possible, I suppose.
Like you said, Real Madrid will be competing in the Champions League for the first time. And I suppose you could say the Spanish team will won, even though they're unseeded, they were probably one of the toughest opponents that City could have potentially drew in this in this round. And although City may be favourites to progress in the tournament, we can ill afford to kind of take chances, and we will really need to hit the ground running from the off. I suppose what comes into that is looking back to last season where City were almost slow off the mark, you know, and it cost us potentially, you know, towards the end of the season where, you know, we dropped points at the start of the season that, you know, games where we should have gone and won. And I think, like you said, you know, the injury concerns where, you know, obviously we've learnt this week that Lucy Bronze potentially might not start the season with us, obviously following a knee surgery. Obviously we know that Chloe Kelly is missing from the squad. How much time and opportunity have the new players had within the squad to you know, to bed in, to obviously become accustomed to the environment, you know, so there's obviously a lot of mitigating factors within this, obviously heading into the start of the season too.
Yeah, I think firstly, looking at Real Madrid, I think the fact that they're in the Champions League for the first time, make no doubt about it, they'll have their eyes on getting into the next round. Really? And, you know, they'll see taking on Man City, you know, one of the top, certainly one of the top 8 teams in Europe at the minute. You know, they'll see that as a big incentive, you know, for them to achieve that goal and cause a bit of an upset. Although you can argue, would it be an upset given the money that I'm sure Real Madrid will be ploughing in behind the scenes? But yeah, for City, I think it's very difficult. I think there's the injury factor. There's the fact that you've got players coming back from the Olympics who've only just linked up with the squad recently. And I just think there's a couple of positions where if you lose a player, or if a player you can't kind of be risked, I suppose, if they're carrying a knock, they're just a little bit, particularly at the back end of the pitch, they're just a little bit short, I think. But that doesn't mean to say, I don't know what, presumably the registration deadline for the Champions League must be coming up quite soon, but it doesn't mean to say before the start of the domestic season, Gareth's not going to bring 1 or 2 players in. In fact, I would be surprised if he didn't, given the situation they're in. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one. They've just got to get through it and then obviously see what the next round brings up, really.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look ahead now to the Women's Super League for the 21-22 season. It will see the women's game move to a mainstream broadcaster with potentially improved coverage, reaching a whole new audience, with many positives to hopefully come from the move that will hopefully continue to see the women's game grow and improve in time. What teams do you think could surprise us, and who do you think has done the best business across the summer so far? I say so far because I still don't think we're done.
No, absolutely. And I think you can see, I've certainly noticed from those friendly games which have been publicised in the last few weeks, there's a couple of trialists named in squad. So I would expect that clubs are kind of dotting I's and crossing T's as far as some last minute deals are concerned. As I say, there's certainly at least one club who I'll be very surprised if they didn't add another 3 or 4 players before the start of the season, because they're going to be very short. And obviously last minute loans, you don't know, you know, some players who aren't going to be guaranteed minutes might get shipped out to get some game time week in, week out as well. So yeah, I think there's plenty of that to come. In terms of surprises this season, I think it wouldn't be a surprise. We've already said Everton. I think Arsenal potentially are looking very bright. I think it might be a shock if they're getting, you know, either win it or come second, but I think there could be a stronger proposition than there were last year, as long as they avoid injuries. Man United, I think Mark Skinner, it's a clever appointment. I think he knows how to play. He's very tactically aware, but I think he knows how to play the crowd as well, and you know, get them on side and kind of get everybody together as that one club. So I think, you know, there'll be a lot of harmony in that team, I think, as they go into the new season. And looking lower down the pack, who could potentially jump out? I don't know, maybe Aston Villa have signed quite well. Obviously, Carla Ward, we know, is a very bright young manager. Brought in 4 or 5, you know, plus really experienced players and of a decent quality. Players like Hannah Hampton, you know, really good signings. Remy Allen, who's pulled the strings in midfield in this league for a lot of years. You know, they might do quite well. And I suppose a real unknown for me is West Ham. We don't know a lot about Ollie Harder. We know obviously he's turned a team round in Norway previously. A few outside of the box signings there, I think. So, you know, let's see what they can do. You know, equally, they might not have such a good season. And then down the bottom, I think Birmingham will improve. Whether they've got enough compared to the rest of the league, kind of let's see what happens there. I'm not so sure about Spurs. Obviously, they didn't have a great end to the campaign last year. And I suppose when we're talking about surprise packages, what are Leicester going to do as well? Very ambitious board, great backing, and they've got a good people running the club, good manager, and they've built a very good squad, and they've added to it quite cleverly over the summer. So maybe they're one to push towards the top half or the bottom half or into the top half.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Leicester City joined the WSL for the first time in their history, having made that transition to part-time to full-time and going through that whole process, and just reward really for their efforts and all the investment that they've made at the club as well for their women's team. And a welcomed addition to the league. We've obviously played Leicester a few times in the FA Cup, and they've always gave us a game. So for me, they're definitely not one to be underestimated, especially with the signings that they've made for the squad for the summer.
Yeah, I think some people love it or hate it. If a team throws money at their squad of players and at a competition and they want to do well, you have to accept them in the league. There'll be some jealousy there, the fact that they're relatively well run and they're showing a lot of ambition. But Jonathan Morgan put together a squad which I would say is probably stronger than any side in the Championship this season. I think if they played in it again, they'd win it. He's got some good forwards there: Natasha Flint, Shannon O'Brien, LeChamp Paul's another good player. But I think he's been very, very clever in the transfer market as well. He's gone to get people like Abby McManus, who's obviously got England caps. Molly Pike hasn't been playing at Everton, but when she did play, she was very creative. A lot of assists there. He's just gone for quality. And added a few young players as well who are only going to blossom and make the team stronger. So, yeah, I think he's added really well to a really solid base which was already there, and they're going to be a welcome addition, and I don't think they're going to be an easy opponent for anybody.
I think as well, like when you see like players like Jess Sigsworth that's obviously played at sort of United, and Abby McManus as well, like you said, and that have made that sort of transition to the club as well, a team coming up to the league, I think that's a really positive move as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at Sigsworth, I mean, if she probably didn't play as much at United last year's, she probably needed to. We know she's too good to play in the Championship. With more minutes, she's surely going to get more goals in the Super League. She's going to have plenty of creativity around her. She's potentially going to have Natasha Flint to play off, who, is a really strong player. She'll hold the ball up well for her. So, yeah, I think she'll fit in really well there. And, yeah, they're making all the right noises. They're signing lots of great experienced players.
Yeah. City themselves have seen plenty of comings and going, as to be expected. But what have you made of the business done so far and the latest additions to Gareth Taylor's side?
Yeah, I think we've had 4 signings so far, haven't we? I think we've got Ruby Mace, who's obviously one for the future. Playing a number of positions. I think she was centre-back last year at Birmingham. She could play full-back, playing midfield. Obviously, with the shortage of centre-backs at the minute at the club, she could be an option, certainly to fill gaps when they appear. Bunny Shaw's obviously got goals at a very high level in one of European football's probably top 3 or 4 leagues. So again, she should do very well and get lots of goals in this City side. Who else have they got? Vicky Losada from Barcelona, obviously great player, European winner. She'll fill that gap left by Sam Mewis's departure quite nicely, I think. And Hayley Rasso, I suppose. Hayley, you can play wherever you want to play out wide. She could slot in at fullback if you wanted her to. You could play her in midfield. You could probably play her as a wing forward as well, like Everton did a little bit last season. So again, she's got great adaptability. I just think they're maybe a little bit short in the centre of the park. I think, another central midfielder, an experienced defender, somebody of an age, I don't know, between 24 and 29 who's experienced in the European game. Because it feels you're at both ends of the scale. You've got people like Esme Morgan, who, is still very young, and you've got Steph Houghton, who's obviously in the latter stages of a career now. So somebody who's well seasoned, if you like, to slot in there, would probably fill a little bit of a weakness, I feel, at the minute.
Do you almost feel surprised about the departure of Dal Kemper?
No, I don't think it did, because I think there was always those rumblings, and you just kind of wondered, is she happy here? Has she really got long-term plans to be here? It always felt like there could be a move. I think it's disappointing with the American players, and maybe that's a lesson that City maybe learn going forward. I think obviously when their league, particularly thinking about Sam Mewis and Rose Lavelle, obviously when there was no football in America, they've obviously come over here and had a season in England. It's bitterly disappointing. I think that you've got 3 American players who've opted to go straight back to America, really. It obviously leaves holes in the City team. They've had the benefit for a few months, but it now means that the club are re-recruiting again and looking for players, to match those players who are going back. I think if I was Gareth Taylor, if the opportunity came up again, I'd probably think slightly different. I know Mewis, obviously, in particular, was fantastic last year, but they just don't seem to stay over here for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, if you're building a team and you're wanting a team to compete at the very highest level for a number of years, there might not be necessarily the best options. But yeah, it didn't completely surprise me, because it sounded like it might happen. But yeah, I just think they've got a great benefit of players, like Mewis last year, but are they a long-term option? Probably not. It might be a different recruitment route that the club's got to look at in the future.
We'll reflect back on this COVID season as the year when the Americans came over, and I think it had positives for us as much as it had positives for them. Obviously, it gave them game time in terms of that preparation and getting the regular minutes and keeping their fitness up. With eyes on obviously Tokyo and one thing and another. I think for us, it's more the fact that it enables us to go onto a platform with a wider audience, if you want, a more global audience, and sort of the viewership figures of obviously those Americans, overseas, sort of tuning in and sort of being introduced to the WSL, I suppose. Hopefully that might continue. There might be a little bit more interest from sort of overseas and that global sort of audience.
Yeah, possibly. I think the vibe I get from American players, and I got it a little bit from Alex Morgan as well, which was a move which probably out of the 4 worked out the least. I kind of got the vibe that what happens in the United States national team is kind of the be all and end all. You probably wouldn't get a player like Steph Houghton. I know she wears 3 lines or 3 lionesses on her chest, and she lives and breathes England, but I don't get that same vibe that it's kind of the ultimate, or the everything in terms of England. Obviously she cares every bit as much about a club as well, but it feels like there's so much of a demand on American players, and so kind of like the dream is turning out for that American side, that the world champions, maybe that staying fit and proving themselves when the American league's down, due to COVID, might have been kind of the be all and end all. And, City have just reaped a little bit of a benefit out of it, having the players over here. But yeah, it was a strange situation. Obviously, we might never get it again with the pandemic. Hopefully we won't, where we've got leagues, not playing due to, unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, it's a strange one, the United States. And yeah, I just don't know. I don't know going forward whether it's the way forward to get more Americans into the game. If the opportunity comes up again, it might not.
Yeah, it's going to be one that we'll just remember it for what it was. I think obviously with so many savvy additions across the league, and the potential deal still yet to be done that we've touched upon. Who do you think will be the ones to watch, and who do you think will be those players that will sort of make the biggest impact?
I think Lasada's going to be big at City without a doubt, and I think Bunny Shaw's going to be very big at City. As I say, if you can go and be top scorer in France, which, against players who are playing for Lyon and PSG, that takes some doing that. So I think she's definitely going to be one to watch, but I wouldn't like to be Gareth Taylor trying to balance that forward line, because one thing City have got is a lot of exceptional forward players. That's one area that they're really strong, I think. I think Lasada's obviously a quality player. She's got big boots to fill, but when you come with a European title, you can't come with much more, I suppose. So yeah, I think those players will shine in terms of City signings. I've been impressed with Iwabuchi at Arsenal. Obviously, we couldn't really judge her based on the team she was in last year. She's done very well with Japan over the summer, particularly in the warm-up matches for the Olympics. She's done exceptionally well, scored a great goal in the Champions League the other day. So I think she's going to be one to watch. I think she'll really help Arsenal. We keep saying Everton, but again, Anna Ramvegard, I'm sure will have a good year with Everton. Again, lots of quality players. Govan, if she stays fit all season, obviously she had a lot of injury problems last year, but again, they could have a 10-15 goal a season striker there. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what some of the, I don't really want to call them lesser clubs, but obviously Brighton have got Babajide and Carter. It'll be interesting to see whether, they're decent signings, see whether they can live up to the league. I think Lee as well at Brighton. Obviously she had her in last year and she was just getting a fit and up to speed, and she liked what she saw and she started to deliver the goods at the end of last year. So I think she could have a good season. We haven't touched on them yet, but Reading, Dan Rose has gone there. Kelly Chambers going for experience at Reading again. I think they've just signed a Belgian midfielder as well. I don't know a lot about her, but she comes with very good pedigree. So yeah, I think Reading make all the right noises, and to stay, given all the money in the league, I don't think Reading have the biggest budget to be able to stay there and be competitive in the league year after year is a real credit to what they do there.
I mean, I usually ask you for a prediction, but you usually tell me, no, I'm not going to give you one. You have to buy the magazine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just putting together my predictions at the minute, actually. I've done Championship. God help me doing it. Well, to be fair, that was harder. Super League should be a doddle compared to that. But yeah, we'll have a new issue coming out probably just after the Everton game. I'm yet to link in with the Man City OSC guys, but hopefully we'll get them back available in the ground as well. So predictions, transfers, usual news in there. But yeah, hopefully we're back to pre-COVID.
Yeah, definitely. And you also do magazine subscriptions for the season as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they're on from July, but we've still got issues available. So if you've missed one, we can certainly fill you in. Or likewise, if you used to get them and you're still waiting for older copies to fill in, if you missed any, we've got back issues available. But yeah, subscriptions are £30 for the season if you want to get a paper copy, or £12 digital, and we just email you a copy each month.
Brilliant. And I suppose I've got to plug the socials as well while you're here.
I'm rubbish at socials, but yeah, Twitter's the best. You can
remember them. I've done it for ages. FAWSL FT.
Yeah, Instagram you'll find us, and Facebook you'll find us, but yeah, not as popular.
I'll link it in the description anyway.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for chatting to me tonight. It's been great to catch up, and obviously, hopefully, I'll see you at some point during the season, hopefully at Everton.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Emma. Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Cheers, Dan. Bye. Thanks to Dan for joining me on this week's show. We'll be back next week, but this time we'll be getting the thoughts of the fans and chatting to the OSC ahead of the start of the season. Thanks for listening, and if you're on social media, make sure you're following us on Instagram and Twitter at MCW Fancast, and we'll see you next week. Bye.